learned words of a great bard. There are kings and there are kings. There are empires and there are empires. There are emperors and there are emperors. But there can only be one.
What would have happened to the continent and to our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean after the outbreak of COVID-19, when most of us could not access either personal protective equipment or vaccines in a new and amazing world of vaccine nationalism? Working closely with the African Center for Disease Control, UNECA, and the AU envoy for COVID-19, Strive Masiyiwa, Afrexim Bank developed quickly the African Vaccine Acquisition Trust, AVAD, which through pooled procurement at the continental level suddenly turned us into a powerful force in the global marketplace that nobody could any longer ignore. More than saving lives, the development and effective operationalization of AVAD was a game-changing moment for the continent, or should I say for the Pan-Africanist revival, as it brought together Africa and the Caribbean in one of the most critical moments of their mutual history, where access to vaccines was the dividing line between life and death. Today, I dare say the power and commitment of one of the most relevant financial institutions in our continent put African lives before its bottom line and financial ratios. Again, I dare say the ravages of COVID-19, which brought us together in the face of rising vaccine nationalism, made us discover how important Afrexim Bank was to us as a continent and as a people with the same and common history. The continued growth of Afrexim Bank and development of Africa, again I should say of African countries around the world, have become so intertwined that the question is no longer what we should have done in the face of these major causes if Afrexim Bank had not been there. Instead, the key question for us gathered in Accra today is what should we be doing for Afrexim Bank to enable it to serve us even better and to help us navigate the challenges associated with the stickiness of the colonial development model of resource and extraction, globalization, and heightening geopolitical risks, which are likely to persist in the medium and long term. And here, I'd like to wear my hat of champion of the African Union financial institutions. But before I share my reflections on perspectives on the way forward in that capacity, I'd like to make one general assessment. In the past, we have created highly promising financial institutions just to abandon them before they could even stand on their own, let alone grow into global financial institutions. The reality is that unless we have strong financial institutions, we are not going to develop. As we've learned over the past decades, relying on foreign capital is both risky and costly. It has resulted in huge financial leakages through the high costs of default-driven borrowing rates and interest payments, and undermined the growth of our financial institutions, domestic resource mobilization, and private sector development through cost of funds. The ownership of our financial institutions should be strengthened over time to enhance continuously their development and relevance. Two interventions are important to strengthen the development impact and financial wherewithal of our development financial institutions. They are capital and effective coordination with the African Union. Regarding the first set of intervention, capital, I want to reiterate that despite consistent efforts made by many African governments, including during extremely difficult macroeconomic and global operating environments, our development finance institutions remain highly undercapitalized. Just to provide an illustration and order of magnitude, the Japan Bank for International Cooperation has a share capital of some 19 billion United States dollars. China Exim has a capital of 54 billion United States dollars, whereas Afro-Exim Bank has a capital of some 6 billion United States dollars, which excludes the most recent contribution by countries supporting the ongoing general capital increase. More importantly, we need to evaluate whether this 6 billion capital is sufficient to play that catalytic role of accelerating the creation of the market with a potential combined GDP of some 3.4 trillion United States dollars for our continent. Similarly, I implore the bank's management to work to develop and implement an aggressive strategy to upgrade the bank's current credit rating from BBB to A. This would require continued strengthening of your governance and management structure, as well as personnel. I thank the leaders of those countries and encourage those who have not yet contributed to the ongoing general increase to do so. Those who can afford should consider going beyond their allocated shares. The bank has consistently paid dividends to its shareholders over the decades. As governments, our contribution to the capital of the bank is not in themes of the 2023 edition of this year's meeting. Strengthening the financial wherewithal of our development finance institutions, especially Afro-Exim Bank, and enhancing coordination between these institutions and the African Union are key if the continent is to deliver successfully the vision of shared prosperity for Africans. I have outlined a few measures that should be taken not only by sovereign nations, but also by the vibrant African private sector and captains of industry, who should also play their part in building the Africa we want. Some are already shareholders of the bank, and I thank them for that. At the same time, I encourage those who are not yet to do the same. By investing in Afro-Exim Bank, we're all investing in our own growth, in the growth of our balance sheet, and in the development of our respective countries, thereby spurring even further the far-reaching work that has been done and is being done by that outstanding African, Professor Benedict Orama, and his excellent team. I am comforted by the array of expertise available to us. Now more than ever, it has become urgent to take the necessary steps to transition us towards becoming a resilient continent. Africa has to exploit her productive capabilities collectively and build the capacity of her continental development banks in order to realize the Africa we want and an Africa beyond aid. Accordingly, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, it is with great pleasure that I declare the 2023 edition of the Annual General Meetings of Afro-Exim Bank duly open. I wish you a very fruitful meeting. May God bless the African Export-Import Bank, Mother Africa, our kith and kin from the African diaspora, and us all. I thank you for your attention.
The President of our Republic,